Welcome back. Good to be in Unit 7 already. We are making progress. Unit 7 is getting them talking. Our goal here is to say it's got to be about more than just myself. I'd like to take you back in this introduction to the idea of wonderful voices. Aren't there great voices? People whose voices carry the day. They're deep and dramatic. James Earl Jones comes to mind, doesn't he? Oh, they're pleasant, like a little brook dancing over the water, over the waterfall. It sounds wonderful. I could listen to that all day. And some people have that kind of voice. I don't. I've always thought that it was a miracle that I get paid for, in essence, speaking with a voice like mine. My wife assures me, I think she's just being kind, that it still sounds okay. But I know that reality is, I don't have the world's best voice. If you in any way are able to agree with that not only do I have a not great voice, but that maybe your voice isn't James Earl Jones or a laughing brook, then maybe getting somebody else to speak is a good idea. I know it's kind of ironic for us to mention that because here it's just me speaking to you in this one direction format. But we do our best, at least in our discussions, to go back and forth, and I trust that you're doing it even better in your own classes. So let's talk about getting them talking. We'll do this first unit, this discussion, and then in our next unit, our next section on this unit, I'll introduce you to two people, turn you loose once you've met them, and say, what are you going to do with a class for these people? But let's start with getting them talking here. I want to tell you a story I've been looking forward to in the filming of all of this, to the story of our Model A and Steve. We developed or built a 1917 Model T Ford, as you know, and then soon after that, we also built a 1930 Model A Ford. The Model A Ford, like the T, is wooden bodied essentially, and we had to do everything. And one of the parts of the job that we had was to reupholster this old car. Our son Steve, at the time I had the Model A being fixed up, or I was fixing it, was about 4 or 5 years old. And for many, many, many mornings, we would go down to the shop together. He wasn't even in school yet. And for, as long as the attention span of a 4-year-old or a 5-year-old is, we would upholster the Model A. Now, we had a special way of doing this. I would hold, these are literally the needle nose pliers I used, I would hold a upholstery nail, which is pretty small, in the pliers. I would, with another hand, stretch the fabric of the Model A's upholstered seat, hold the nail onto the fabric, and he, with 2 hands, would take this little tack hammer. It's only 13 ounces, but he's 4 or 5 years old. With 2 hands, he would while away on those nails. Of course, I'm no idiot. That's why I'm holding him here with the pliers. We worked at the pace of a 4-year-old, 5-year-old. Now, why did I do that? Is it impossible for one person alone to stretch the fabric and to drive the nail or upholster? No, of course not. People have always done this alone. So, since I could do it alone, and I could probably do it faster, why did I bother to do it this way? Well, every parent in the world knows. You do it because you're doing it with your son. You're doing it together. This is your project with each other. And so, it made a memory. For me, it made a memory for Steve. It made a bond for the two of us. It passed on information in a way no telling him is ever going to do. He knew it because he was doing it. I knew also that down the road we were going to trade places. Yeah, now I'm the one who's doing the job and he's helping. We're going to go the other direction pretty soon, and we did. And actually Steve is a much better mechanic than I am. He's an intuitive mechanic, and I do it because I like it, but I'm not my instant natural nature. But it is for Steve. So we did that. Now, you've probably done the same thing in many ways. As parents, you've had the opportunity to, whether it's teach baking, it's teaching about growing things and caring for a car or the lawn. You've taught about shopping. You've taught any number of things. Could you do the job faster yourself? Well, yeah, of course, maybe. But it's not about that. It's about joining forces, uniting each other together in a common moment, knowing that something bigger is going to come down the road. Well, that's the same thing here. Let's think about this. Every parent knows the answer. It's not speed, it's partnership. It's a bond that's passed on, a way of working, and knowing someday it's going to go on. Discussion is that. We could just say what we want to say, couldn't we? Couldn't you just say it and get it done? But discussion is better. In discussion, we build a relationship. We share the moment of discovery. We discover more than we know ourselves. And we pass on a way of knowing this information and conveying it to somebody else that goes beyond what would happen if it were just up to us to know what was happening. And so, with all of that, let's think about discussion. I'm going to suggest 3 advantages to discussion. Number 1, it makes information more personal through action. You're probably able to just say something, but when somebody else says it themselves and acts upon it, it becomes theirs. Discussion contrasts the experience of several people, and it gives new information to everybody, including you. That's the beauty of discussion. It should be, at some point in every discussion, at least in every class, that you are able to say, I never thought of that. I've never heard it put that way. Now, any reasonable length of time, 10, 15 minutes on a particular question, should yield that result. Somebody is going to say something you've never heard before. In a way, at least, you've never heard before. Think of that. And lastly, it allows people to solidify their own ideas through expressing them to somebody else. Nobody learns more than the teacher. That's an old axiom, and it's true. Well, this gives them the chance to become the teacher and thereby to learn more themselves than they ever would by simply having it told to them by ourselves. Now, how do you lead discussions? I think it has to start by simply liking people. If you like people and like being with them, you're going to value their ideas and you're going to respond in a positive way to those ideas when they come to you. You have to believe that their ideas are valuable and that even though they're at first the ones you've heard so many times, you're going to hear more. So expect that somebody's going to have a great idea and keep asking for that idea to come. Now, this is a key, it seems to me. There's 2 things here. Number 1, you have to work with all kinds of ideas. When people say things, my almost universal experience is they say it out of goodwill. Now, they might be somewhat misinformed at times, but they say it with the expectation that it's correct and it's going to help in the discussion. So if you have that as a foundation, people will generally respond to it in that way. So build on at least some aspect of what they say. It's not possible, I know, 100% of the time. In general, though, you can find something that lends itself to a discussion. If you have to correct somebody, yes, but make that correction in terms of where they got it. Then go beyond that to what's positive in their statement. So work with virtually anything in the most positive manner, and that lends itself to discussion. Number 2, and I think this one is especially interesting, ask a question for which you don't know the answer. That has 2 possibilities in itself. Number 1, ask a question you literally don't know the answer of. That is, it's a classic question. You can ask the question, why are some saved and not others? Lutherans have no single, all-inclusive answer to that question. So we have to simply allow it in all its diversity. And finally, let's say there's a mystery here. Number 2, ask a question even though, as far as you can tell, the answer is already here. See, think of it. I often ask, for instance, in New Testament class, why is the first miracle of Jesus the perfect first miracle? It's a great question. And I've got 5 or 6 answers ready to go in my mind, and I know them. I've heard them over and over again. And when I've heard, say, all 6, I still like to ask, so why is this the perfect first miracle? Do I have a 7th answer? No, don't. I'm empty. You know what? I have never had a whole group of 30 students fold their hands and say, no, got nothing. No. The fact that we've had 6 in no way says to them, we're done. There's no more. No. The fact that we've already had 6 generally says to them, why? There might be 7. There might be 9. There might be 12. Who knows? If you ask that question with the air of expectation, it'll come through. People will respond and give you exactly what you expect. But the good news is you don't know what it's going to be. Now, there's some practical steps to all this. When you ask questions, avoid yes or no. There's very few times where a yes-no answer is going to work. Most of the times we ask yes-no questions Because, well, remember our old friend, the 7 laws? Because we want to plant flowers, not seeds. We want to get exactly what we've seen ahead of time, and that's why we ask yes or no questions. Plant seeds. Ask questions that have a wide possible range of answers. That's more exciting. Dangerous, but more exciting. The exception to that rule would be a question that has no single yes, no answer. Are good works necessary for salvation? You know, that classic one. And the Lutheran confessions go in both directions with that. But in general, ask questions of direction. We've touched briefly on this before. I just want to repeat it for you, kind of repeating that 7 laws of repetition here, where the directions that are possible in a question are really important. Now, I've got 4 directions that I frequently use. You can develop others, of course, on your own, but here's my suggestion. Work with these 4, and you'll be in great shape. The first one is a direction of back in time. So here's an event, a person, some moment, a text, for instance. Go back and say, when have I seen this before? When have I encountered this person? When have I been at this place? When has something like this happened before? And what's the link from one to the other? Now, obviously, I'm talking about the continuity of the contextual river here, and finding that this is the repetition I should have perhaps seen coming, so why is it here now? Second one, go forward in time. If this is true, what's going to happen? Now, this is a great question to ask, for instance, in the application part of a lesson plan. If you're doing serendipity with its 3 parts and you're getting to the apply section, then say simply, if it's really true that God, for instance, is for us and no one can therefore be against us, what's life going to be like this week? What's life going to be different from the past because of this? So go in the future with people. Next direction is downward. Not down in a despairing way, but down in a grounding way. It's the question of really. Really? When have I actually seen people act like this? When have I ever seen somebody do this? Really? I think really is a great question to ask, for instance, in the Sermon on the Mount. When Jesus says, turn the other cheek, go the extra mile, give up your coat, all of those wonderful things. Ask, really? Do people do that? Am I supposed to do that? Has anyone ever done that? See, ask him that. Now the answer might be yes, they have. Yes, you will. Or maybe the answer will also take us back to the one we're asking the question of. Maybe I should go back and ask, maybe this isn't about him that is directing me, but it's really a question that allows me to see him. That is, I get to see the nature of Jesus' sacrifice in what he's describing as my own actions, but really they're also a picture of him. So ask really questions. And that rebounds us upward to say, what about God? Maybe all this text and all of its questions isn't then supposed to change our life in its exact detail, but it actually is a revelation of God. What's God like? How does this say something about the nature of God and his interaction with the world, his expectation for us, his own plan, his method of working, what he celebrates and values? What does this tell us about God? Isn't that a wonderful open direction? Now, by the way, isn't that a kind of question that has more than one answer? And it certainly is the kind of question that you, having gotten the answers you expect, probably are going to ask again. You don't know exactly where it's going to go, but there's going to be an answer. Unexpected. Now, besides those 4 directions, I think you want to harness the common experiences of people. In general, when you're asking questions of people, especially at the start, say at the start of a serendipity model, you want to call on the common experiences of all of us. We've all had bad days. What do? We've all been too busy. How do you deal with that? We've all felt that the world is going by too fast for us. Just any number of things. I generally took the negative there. We also have had perfect spring mornings. Where would you love to spend it? You know, those kinds of questions are universal enough to draw us all in and make us all a part of the contribution. Talk about physical things that people can see. Their pet, which is a classic. Always can talk about that. Somebody's best gift, their first car, their first apartment, their home, their dorm room, their favorite place to escape. I've rarely ever found somebody who doesn't have something to contribute on that level. And again, especially if you're doing serendipity, it's a wonderful way to start in a way that draws people in all at one time. I love food. I love food so much that not only, well, of course, I'm thinking to myself right now, I wonder what is for supper. But it's a great analogy. It's a great model. I talk about it so often that once I was guest preaching at a vacant church Sunday after Sunday, my wife came, and one of the ladies said in the back, "My, he certainly loves food, doesn't he? He's always talking about it." Kind of made me cautious about talking about food a lot. But I'm still going to say that, warm bread, crisp apples, and always chocolate will have an appeal to virtually anybody. And the smell and the texture and the wonderful feeling that comes from those, hard to beat. Not a bad way to start. Few final steps. Have questions that allow for time for thinking, also questions that are instantaneous. People are divided on this. Some want to know up front, early on, what question you're going to ask, and they need time to prepare. So print out some of the questions that you're going to use and allow those who come early to see them and to get their answers, and maybe even encourage them to write out their answers ahead of time. Some people need to speak in order to think, and they're ready to do it right now. You'll know quickly who those folks are, so allow them their chance to speak right now, because their impatience will be graded by the need for ponderous thought before speaking. So have a balance in that. If you have a very large group, you can divide it into small groups and allow for discussion among those small groups, and then hear from people within those small groups, at least a representative number in the larger group. Let people hand off in the group. I let it happen in two ways. Sometimes I demand that somebody speak only in terms of what somebody else said. This is a good caution if you've been hearing a great deal from somebody and it now forces them to carefully listen to someone else if they want to talk. The other thing is they can simply defer to someone else's answer. Ask somebody in a group, what was the best answer that you heard, and then call on one of perhaps the quieter members in the group. And now they can give their own answer, but they don't have to. They certainly can say, well, the best answer was John's, and go ahead. Well, what did John say? And don't let John answer it. Have them say at least the essence of what John's answer was. Always assure people that they have good answers, good ideas, build them up. Wait 5 to 10 seconds. They're very long seconds. Oh my goodness. Well, you have to wait and wait for somebody to come up with the answer. But if you wait, it'll come. Trust me. And that answer will come. You might have to restate the question in some manner. And you can always call on somebody whose helium hand is up waiting to go. All in all, enjoy leading discussions. I really do, and I think you will too. Could you get to the material faster if you grabbed the hammer yourself and forgot about these pliers? Yeah, you probably could. You could whisk through the material. Would anybody learn it? Would you learn everything that's possible to be learned? No, because, well, you haven't heard from everyone, and it's hearing from everyone that really matters. So enjoy leading discussions and enjoy the breadth of ideas and the way they're expressed in your group. Have a good time.